with us this morning, and I just want to encourage you that if you have a moment to hit maybe watch party and share that, or just share the live stream to your friends, and that kind of multiplies our send out there. But this is the Sunday after Easter, and it's sure good to see sunshine. Hope you'll be getting out there. So let's just open up with a word song. There's a song in my soul, and I feel it's stirring in me. This I know for sure, that your love is like a flood, and your mercy never ending. I give my soul to you. There's a joy in my soul, and it rises like the morning. one. If for some reason we get shut off on Facebook Live or the live stream goes down, just know that this is recorded to a memory card, and we will post that to the YouTube right after the service. So we will never lose a morning completely. We may lose a live stream at some point in time, but we're ready to make sure that you at least get the service. So we'll be uploading that right after the service every time, every Sunday. And you can always get there. And if you share to your friends, that's probably the better link right off YouTube, because it's going to be the better video quality and sound quality. But for the live stream, make sure you do share that or do a watch party. As far as announcements, we're just kind of keeping with our system we have in place right now. And so I think this afternoon is the women's group at 4. Women's group at 4 on Zoom. Would be looking for the link for that. On Thursday, of course, we do our prayer and devotional time at 7 o'clock. And so please join us for that time. We're going through the gates of Jerusalem that Nehemiah and his group of people rebuilt. And then Saturday was school on Saturday mornings for all the brothers and sisters Sunday school class at 10 a.m. We're keeping that so far. I know as the weather gets nicer, it's maybe getting harder to get everybody on a Saturday morning, but we'll adjust as needed. And I think that's about it so far. But just know too that Thursday night is a great time for us to kind of just touch base, pray for one another. Make sure you send in prayer requests, because we are going to pray as a group on Thursday night specifically for those prayer requests. We do have a praise. I think yesterday evening, Niestrom's brought home Alex, little baby Alex. So that was a great thing. They're home and healthy and doing well. He's healthy and Heather's healthy. So we're thankful for that. Am I missing anything? Oh, today is Crazy Sock Day. So if you wore your crazy socks, make sure you took a picture. We took our pictures, and I'm going to take my shoes off. What? Yeah, that's right. I've got my shark socks on. I got these for VBS because of the song Baby Shark, which we're not going to do this morning, but VBS is coming. And so we got socks all over up here. Amanda and Brandon sporting some cool socks. Got Josh and Caleb. Caleb is mismatched, which makes a lot of sense. You know him. Misty special ordered these socks for this Sunday. So make sure you take a picture of your socks. Post them on the group, Facebook group, and we'll. Stacy said you guys are doing that, so that's awesome. Just have fun with that. We're going to look at little themes we can do every week. So today's theme, of course, is the walk to Emmaus. Right after Jesus' resurrection, he appears to 2 disciples. We're going to dig into that, and so that was kind of the theme. Let's talk a little about tithes and offerings. If you have seen before, you can either mail those into the church at 1120 Glenarm Street, and I posted that link right before the service started, or you can use the PayPal link, and many of you do that, and you can just donate right from your PayPal account or from your credit card. So both of those ways, but please be mindful of the church that during this time, we're tightening our belts as trying to be good stewards of what we have, but income has lessened in this time for the church, of course, as it has probably across many churches. But please be mindful of the church at this time. And let's pray for God to just continue to do the great work in spite of this situation. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, we're so desperate for you right now. We're desperate for your love and your grace and your mercy. We feel kind of disjointed in the way we worship and the way we connect with you. But that doesn't mean we haven't been able to. And I hear such great stories of people who are learning new ways or relearning ways to connect with you in their own lives, in their own homes. I'm so excited to see families doing devotional together and reading their Bibles together and spending time together. Lord, bless those times, Lord, and instill within us a sense that you are good through it all, and you are God above it all. And we're so thankful for that. Lord, as we worship you this morning, we want you to be sovereign in our hearts, in our homes, in our church. Lord, we want you to be in control of it all. More than ever before, I think we're realizing that we don't do it so well on our own. We can't trust in chariots and horses and spears. By the same token, we don't trust in the government. We don't trust in the laws of the land. Lord, we trust in the name of the Lord our God. You lift us up. You empower us. You bring your people to you. Lord, you come to us. We're going to discover that this morning in our message time. Would you speak to us this morning, wherever we are, and we'll give you praise. And all the people said, amen. As we get into this song, I'm just going to ask a question. I want you to think about it. Here's the question. Have you ever lost faith? Have you ever lost faith? Just want you to think about that question. get into our passage here. This passage is about, get my clicker out. This passage is about rediscovery, recognition, and reignition. We're going to see how Jesus accomplishes this as two specific disciples are floundering in their faith. If you have your Bibles, open up to Luke 24. Luke 24, verses 13 through 35. That same day, 2 of Jesus' followers were walking to the village of Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. And as they walked along, they were talking about everything that had happened. And as they talked and discussed these things, Jesus himself suddenly came and began walking with them. But God kept them from recognizing him. Jesus asked them, "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" They stopped short, sadness written across their faces. Then one of them, Cleopas, replied, "You must be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all the things that have happened there the last few days." "What things?" Jesus asked. "Well, the things that happened to Jesus, the man from Nazareth," they said. "He was a prophet who did powerful miracles, and he was a mighty teacher in the eyes of God and all the people. But our leading priests and other religious leaders, they handed him over to be condemned to death, and they crucified him. We had hoped he was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. This all happened 3 days ago. Then some women from our group of his followers were at his tomb early this morning, and they came back with an amazing report. They said his body was missing, and they had seen angels who told them that Jesus is alive. Some of our men ran out to see, and sure enough, his body was gone, just as the women had said." And then Jesus said to them, "You foolish people, you find it so hard to believe all that the prophets wrote in the scriptures. Wasn't it clearly predicted that the Messiah would have to suffer all these things before entering his glory?" Then Jesus took them through the writings of Moses and all the prophets, explaining from all the scriptures the things concerning himself. By this time, they were nearing Emmaus and the end of their journey. Jesus acted as if he were going on, but they begged him, "Stay the night with us, since it is getting late." So he went home with them. And as they sat down to eat, Jesus took the bread and blessed it. And then he broke it and he gave it to them. Suddenly their eyes were opened and they recognized him. And at that moment, he disappeared. And they said to each other, "Didn't our hearts burn within us as he talked with us on the road and explained the scriptures to us?" And within the hour, they were on their way back to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 disciples and the others who had gathered with them. And they were saying, "The Lord has really risen. He appeared to Peter." Then the 2 from Emmaus told their story of how Jesus had appeared to them as they were walking along the road and how they had recognized him as he was breaking the bread. I did a little sleuthing to try to figure out who were these 2 disciples that figure so prominently in this story. Luke mentions the name of one of the disciples, Cleopas. He says, "Then one of them, Cleopas." This is most probably the same disciple mentioned in John's account of the gospel. In John 19:25, it says, "Standing near the cross were Jesus' mother and his mother's sister, his aunt." And then he mentions a Mary who was the wife of Clopas and Mary Magdalene. Even though the writing or the spelling of Cleopas and Clopas is different, it's been long assumed, and for good reason, that these are the same person. So you have Cleopas and you have his wife Mary. And they were most probably, the two disciples that were headed to Emmaus, which was likely their home. The couple seemed to have been part of the inner circle of disciples. And the reason we say that is that only the women would have been responsible for the caretaking of the body of Jesus would have been allowed close to the tomb. They allowed his mother, of course, her support team of her sister, and then Mary Magdalene, who was part of the inner circle, we know that. And then this Mary, the wife of Cleopas. And so they must have been part of that inner circle and close to one another. I kind of envision them as the married couple that were part of the group that everybody treasured. And so Cleopas' wife was with Mary, and she would have been watching firsthand the crucifixion of Jesus. She would have been close enough to hear his labored breathing, to see the sweat on his brow as it mingled with the blood from the crown of thorns. She was right there when he cried out to the Lord, his Father, "Why have you forsaken me?" She heard that. She was right there when the soldier stuck his spear in the side and vinegar and blood poured out. She was standing right there. The men would have been held at a distance by the guards. And so Cleopas and the other disciples would have been back a ways. They could see what was going on, but for Cleopas' wife, she was right there. She saw Jesus die on the cross. She was right there when Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, who had come to Jesus in the night, had begged to be allowed to take the body of Jesus down and put him in the tomb of Joseph. It was a kindness, really, because if Joseph had not provided the tomb, Jesus would have been thrown into a mass grave, most probably with other criminals and thieves and unknowns. But at least this way, they could protect the body of Jesus and separate him from all the rest. They weren't able to do anything with the body at that time because it was still Passover and the Sabbath was Saturday. And so they put the body of Jesus safely away in the tomb. They rolled a stone in front of it. Pontius Pilate puts a guard at the tomb just in case. He knows this is a political hotbed here. And they wait. And they wait through Sabbath, through Saturday, until Sunday morning. It was for the same reason that Cleopas and his wife did not go home Friday night. It was still Passover. They were still there for the feast. They needed to stay. And they couldn't go back on Saturday because it was the Sabbath and you weren't supposed to. So they couldn't go home to Emmaus. So now they've waited until Sunday morning, and they've gathered their stuff together, and they're packing their bags, and they're maybe putting them on donkeys or on backpacks, whatever it might have been. And they're getting ready for their 7-mile hike home to Emmaus. And I'm sure it was a somber weekend, the entire weekend. I think that word somber, where you just don't really talk. You're afraid to talk because you feel like your emotions are going to overwhelm you, and so you just kind of go about business. It's quiet. It was a difficult weekend, a lot of hurt, a lot of grieving. And I want you to think about this. Going home must have seemed like giving up hope in so many ways. For the disciples, especially those on the inner circle who had walked with Jesus so much, had sat at his feet and listened to his teachings, had seen his miracles. After the crucifixion and now Jesus' body is gone and they don't know what to believe. There's just rumors flying around like crazy, and they don't want to allow hope to take root because they don't want to be hurt too bad. And so they know what the report has been from Mary Magdalene, but they're just not sure what to do with that. going home must have felt like giving up hope in so many ways. So I ask the question again, have you ever lost your faith? Have you ever lost your faith? Maybe not in entirety, and I want you to think about maybe the ways that we lose our faith. Maybe not entirely, but in part, little pieces of our faith. And you might say, I still believe in God, but suddenly I'm not so sure that he hears my cry or he cares anymore because life has been so hard. Life has been so difficult. And I've got so many questions, and I feel these doubts welling up within me, and I'm frustrated and I'm scared. And I think there's a lot of people who can resonate with those moments. We don't like to admit that we lose faith sometimes. But we do. In bits and pieces. You might think that Jesus would have been frustrated with our floundering faith. I hear him ask the question, ye of little faith, why? Why do you ask these questions? Why do you do these things? Why do you not believe? Ye of little faith, and it feels like a condemnation, but it's not really a condemnation. It's really simply calling the kettle black. It's really just revealing an honest truth that Jesus is pointing out that sometimes we have lost our faith. Sometimes our faith has dwindled and the fire has died to just maybe an ember. So the question today is not whether we have floundering faith, because I think all of us do at times. But the question is really, what does Jesus do in response to our floundering faith? So here's some great news for you. Jesus doesn't leave us defeated in our floundering faith. He doesn't leave us defeated. It's not the end. I think it's beautiful that Jesus cares about these two people. He cares about them so much that he doesn't just appear to them, but he walks the road with them. And hear me, he walks the entire road. Underline that if you have your sermon note sheet, or just think about that. He walked the entire road home with them. In their time of grieving, in their time of doubt, in their time of floundering faith, Jesus walked with them the entire way. He doesn't leave us defeated in our floundering faith. And Jesus took the time to help them process the deeper and more profound truth that he had defeated death and rose again. Let's sing. The chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to him. So this is a journey about rediscovery, recognition, and reignition. I just want to explain what my thoughts are on that. So rediscovery. Rediscovery. Jesus appears to them and he asks this question, what are you discussing so intently as you walk along? It says they stopped short. You can see the sadness in their face. Cleopas replies, you must be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all that has happened. And Jesus asks what things. And he's taking them to this place of re-examination of the events. And I love that he brings them to this place where they're going to tell him who Jesus is. He's coming upon them like he doesn't have a clue what has happened and who Jesus of Nazareth. And so they tell him, and they say he was a man from Nazareth. He was a prophet who did powerful miracles, and he was a mighty teacher in the eyes of God and all the people. Jesus took them back to their original experience with them. I want you to hear that this morning, because I think sometimes we have allowed a lot of things, a lot of junk to get in between this wrong relationship we're meant to have with Jesus. We think it through too much. We got too much doctrine and theology that's making stumbling blocks. And we need to be reminded of the power of the relationship. That when we were hurting and when we were desperate, it was Jesus who loved us. It was Jesus who picked us up. It was Jesus who healed us. It was Jesus who saved us. That's what we need to know about Jesus. We don't need to know all the other stuff, really. We just need to know that it's Jesus, because it's only through him and in his name and our belief in him that we're saved. It doesn't matter all this other stuff to a point. We should be good disciples. We should be students. But we should never lose our original first love. The greater truth of Jesus is who he is, not what happened to him on Good Friday. Yes, Jesus was crucified. But he is today the anointed, victorious Son of God. That's what we need to really focus in on. And see, Cleopas and his wife, Mary, all that they could deal with in their mind was a crucified Jesus. And a crucified Jesus is sorrow and hurt. But a resurrected Jesus, alive and well and on the throne, that sets things in motion. And so there's a rediscovering of who Jesus is. And that leads them to this recognition. And it says when they're in their house, in their home, and they're eating that night, it says Jesus, he took the bread and he blessed it, and immediately our minds go back to the upper room. Immediately our minds go back to a Passover meal. And Jesus breaks the bread and blesses it. And he gave it to them. And it says, suddenly their eyes were opened and they recognized him. I wonder about that. Earlier on it says that God shut their eyes. God did not allow them to recognize Jesus. Why? Why would they do that? Because I think Jesus, in his infinite wisdom, is leading them to rediscovery and recognition, to a place where they could really fully apprehend what's going on. And I want you to know that sometimes God chooses opportune times. There are opportune times. That means there's good times for God to reveal himself to us. It's when we are ready. And I thought about that. I thought, how many times have I not been ready? I've been disconnected. I've been out of focus. I've been so focused on myself. I have been under fear and anxiety and stress. And I'm not listening. And I'm not walking with my eyes open. I'm certainly not looking to the heavens from which my help comes. And Jesus is right here. This is a good time. They've walked 7 miles with Jesus. They've rediscovered who he is. Now he's going to let them recognize him. That moment when you recognize Jesus, it should bring you to your knees. It should change everything. And it did for Cleopas and Mary. And that leads us to the last point, reignition. They say this as after they have recognized him, they said, didn't our hearts burn within us as he talked with us on the road and explained the scriptures to us? And what they're saying is, that's how we felt before. That's how we felt the very first time we sat down at the feet of Jesus and he was preaching and he was teaching from God's word. And it was like God himself was speaking to us and our hearts burned and resonated with him. And we felt that again on the road to Emmaus. And Jesus is doing this work of reigniting that flame. And I thought about what that flame is, and I just wrote some thoughts here. I don't think this is a comprehensive list, but these are some things that came to my mind. I think he was reigniting life in them. They were focused on death, the crucifixion, the dead body of Jesus. They were worried about their own lives. But now he is reigniting life. And he's reigniting a passion for the call, a passion for the ministry. And he's reigniting a confidence, and we know this because directly after this, they head back to Jerusalem. And so they're ready to stand tall. And he's reigniting the mission. There's work to do. Let's get to it. That all happened on our 7-mile hike. to Emmaus. So this morning, as we just kind of close and we think about where we are in our walk with Jesus, I want you to know a couple things. One, he's walking the entire road with you. He'll take you all the way to that place. And in that time, he's going to try to take you back to just that raw relationship with him. And he's going to help you recognize him for who he really is. And then he's going to reignite in your heart life, passion, confidence in the mission. I pray that he's doing that in your life, and I pray that he's doing that in our church. I'm praying that in my own life. We're going to sing this last song, and then we're going to pray. And if you'd like to just pray a simple faith prayer of, Lord, open my eyes, help me see you. We'll do that together. I need you. Soften my heart, break me apart. I need you to open my eyes, see that you're shaping my life. Lord, trust what you say, that your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. I need you. I need you. to us this morning. And Lord, sometimes it is our faith that flounders and we're overcome by the world and the pressures and the fears and anxieties, and you don't let go of us in that time. Rather, instead, Lord, you come even closer to us and you walk with us the entire road. You walk with each of us the entire road. And so, Lord, this morning we give a simple prayer of belief and faith. Lord, open our eyes to see you. Lord, remind us who you are in our lives. Let that be our anchor line, our solid rock that we cling to. Lord, that you are the victorious Son of God. You did go to a cross. We celebrate an empty tomb and an empty cross. We celebrate a throne in heaven that has been filled with you. And so, Lord, may we build our faith on that. We give you the praise and the glory. Pray that you would just give each person a great week, that you would help them see you, open our eyes, give us faith. In Jesus' name we pray. And everybody said, Amen.